Hi, how are you? And it's really nice to be with you. And you can see there's been a change of venue with Emerald Blue Phoenix. Circumstances changed, and I ended up having to come back rather quickly to Australia. And here I am in my hotel room, and on day 2 of what I'm hoping will be 14 days. But all of us are going through circumstances which are not easy. So we just have to make the best of it and get on with it and put one foot in front of the other a little bit to see how things go, right? So I just wanted to have a quick chat to you and bring you up to date on what's been happening in the sky. And I wanted to do this a bit earlier, but it was just impossible with the travel because I travelled quite a long way to get here. So on the 3rd, and I'm just going to go around a few things because I've missed some days, so I'm going to backtrack a bit. So on the 3rd of this month, we had Venus entering Gemini. And so that's going to make us very socially focused because that's what Venus and Gemini is all about. And we're going to be seeking stimulus. And it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we're stuck here in our self-imposed quarantines or in imposed quarantines. And we're all trying to keep up social distancing. But remember, that's a physical social distancing. It doesn't have to be emotional or social. We can still be in contact with each other, and we can still share a great deal with each other, and never underestimate how much we can share through our eyes and our voice. So the other thing about this, though, is it makes us a little bit unpredictable. And this is going to be the story for the next couple of weeks with everything that's been happening in the sky. We're going to have these elements of unpredictability and a little bit of change. I'm going to call this choppy weather. We're going to be a little bit of choppiness about how we're feeling personally. Now, a lot of that has got to do with the unpredictability of the energy that's coming off people. And it's also not being helped because there's a little bit of unpredictability in the sky. But within that unpredictability, there's a bit of a reason for that. And the reason for the sky in terms of these questions is questioning. And there's predictability is about questioning. Sorry, I've had like 3 days, 72 hours of traveling. So I've had a day's rest, but I'm still a bit out of it. Forgive the tripping over of the tongue. It's just not the best. So we're going to have Venus in Gemini. We're going to be seeking stimulus. We're going to be looking to make contact with people. So do reach out to people socially. There's going to be some elements of unpredictability to these social connections as well. So that could be people we're going to meet randomly online, and we might come together very quickly for that period of time that we're talking with each other, and then we may not cross paths again. And I've certainly noticed that with me when we were traveling, people who are on the plane with, we formed this sort of bond and this camaraderie, and that lasted for the period of time that we were traveling together. Then as we all went our separate ways, we went our separate ways. But that time was over. Some of these people I think I might keep in contact with, the majority of them not. And that's the unpredictability of this whole contact. Now, interesting, what we have also had, and I'm sorry I didn't get this to you, but it was just impossible to do while traveling. On the 4th, which was quite an interesting day, it was again another Master Builder Day because of the 4th of the 4th. So that had interesting aspects to it. But Pluto had Jupiter and Pluto were conjunct. I had to get that right. And that's the first of a set of 3. Now, these are really interesting conjunctions. They're going to be happening over the rest of the year. So the first one is that it really kick-started, and there's a drive to make ourselves better. It's a drive to improve who we are and for us to capitalize on our resources, both those we have around us and those we have within us. So there's this real drive. So if you've been feeling some sense of really wanting to make initiatives and get out there and make some changes and get some things happening, so that's also been one of the things that's been kicked off. So there's some things about goal setting most of this, because Jupiter is expanding and Pluto is also about fulfillment. So there's some elements about that which is interesting. So it's about connecting with faith, and this is really what Pluto wants to be us connecting to, is our faith in ourselves and what is faith and how do we experience faith, and having that expanded. And I think that's quite interesting for that to be happening now in this time, but also to be having faith in ourselves. And remember, this is the first of 3. So this is going to be upping and upping and upping as the year goes on. So there's a great drive to be fulfilling ourselves with faith and expanding our belief in ourselves, which is really what faith is. And I think that's most important. One of the things I'm just going to warn you about this is that the flip side of fulfilling yourself and having faith in yourself is some people can get a little bit too expansive, and that can lead to people being a little bit too full of themselves, and allowing us, because we want to believe so desperately, perhaps to be fooled by others. So please just be cautious. And that's my word for this entire time around the virus. It's caution. It's not fear, it's caution. So there's a note of being cautious around this Jupiter conjunct Pluto, because it is about expanding and it is about expanding faith, but we need to have an element of reality, and in this time in particular we really need to have an element of fact checking and be really clear about that. So it's going to be quite interesting. So we've had Venus going into Gemini. So that's very much about social and being very focused and looking for stimulus. Pluto and conjuncting with Jupiter, so that's about expanding and having a look at faith. So we might find ourselves coming together again. This aspect of tribe and like-mindedness is coming up, and social media is asking us to find ourselves. So we're definitely having a look for that, and I think all of that is really, really interesting. On April the 7th, there's a full moon in Libra. And there's 2 other things that's going to be happening with this full moon in Libra. And one of them is that Mars is going to be in Aquarius, and Mars is already in Aquarius and is comfortable in Aquarius. And this is the fact-finding aspect of Mars and Aquarius, and really wanting to have a clear understanding and pushing to get that understanding. And it's going to be square to Uranus in Taurus. Now, Uranus is again a little bit of unpredictability, but Taurus is very earthy and very solid. So some of the things that we're going to be asking questions about, and that's because we need to be asking questions about, because it can't be business as usual. We're going to need to be looking for inspiration and stimulus about where the new opportunities are, because this is a real change point. We are going to see a shake-up in industries. We're going to see a shake-up in economies. We're going to see a shake-up in terms of how we perceive business and connections. And we're already experiencing that. We're already making our way. And some of the things that we've seen is where people or infrastructure has struck with the old habits and old traditions. They haven't been able to keep pace with the changing demands, and we're seeing that on an everyday level. And this is where we're going to have a little bit of patience, and particularly when it comes to governments and government infrastructure. When we think about those things, we're thinking of millions of dollars being invested, our millions of dollars are being invested, and they're going to be slow and they're going to be a little bit clunky. So we're going to have to save our breath about those. But in the new horizon, there's going to be opportunities. And it's interesting now for us to start thinking about where are those new opportunities. And this is where Uranus in Taurus, because Taurus is all about the physical being, how we live our life, how we enjoy our life and what we do, how we make our living. And Uranus is pushing us to have a good think about, well, how are we doing this, and where are the opportunities, and what are those opportunities? And I'm right there. because I've left what was behind, and I was in the tourist industries, and that industry is one of the industries that's taking a major beating and will have a continued major beating for the next 12 months. So we're going to see people traveling within their countries and within their nations. We are not going to see a lot of people crossing borders. We're not going to see a lot of people catching flights. That's going to be a definite slowdown for at least the next 12 months, possibly longer, and that's all dependent on how long it's going to take some countries to get control of this virus and get control of the impacts of this virus and managing it. So I think that's going to be really quite interesting. So we're going to be feeling at times a little bit unsettled. That's really natural, and that will pass through quite quickly. You start feeling unsettled, breathe. Just take some really deep breaths and recenter yourself. The two things, chakra points for the entire progress of this virus is the base chakra, which is connecting us to humanity, and the heart chakra, which is expanding our protection and our love. So they're the two aspects you have to be in control of. The root chakra is either red or black. It's dark, and it's dark crystals. But these dark crystals are earth. Think Mother Earth. That's the connection. The heart chakra is green, which we normally associate with growth. So you can see we're talking growth and we're also talking earth. And that makes a lot of sense in terms of us staying connected and staying open. You need some help. I've put up some things on my Facebook page about the chakras, about the stones, about the colors, and also some things about essential oils if you need to stay connected. You need some help with that, you know where I am, just get in contact with me. Okay. So, but for this particular full moon in Libra, so we've got this trigger that's happening, this square. Remember, squares are triggers with Mars in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. So it's going to be making us to think about some new ideas about how we're living, but also it's going to inspire us to really push to understand that. So that's the Uranus in Aquarius, looking for new ideas. Mars is about facts and being able to communicate, and Taurus is about everyday life. So you could see that we're getting these inspirations about our life and what that's going to look like. Okay, and that's really important in terms of businesses. So some of us will be losing our jobs. There's no two ways about it. We're going to lose our jobs. We're going to lose our businesses. Okay, so we're going to have to think quite laterally about and how are we going to create these new opportunities. And for those of us who are remaining in our business, it's going to be in big businesses, how do we keep relevant? How do we help this business grow and adapt and be versatile in this new environment that we're moving into? And we're in this change period, so we've got the residual of the past that we're still holding on to because that's known and that's comfortable, and we've got these visions of the future that most of us are positively adapting to and moving towards. So some of us will find ourselves with a foot in both camp, but that's only natural because we're at the beginning of this change process, a change process that's been forced upon us. So that's also quite interesting. Most of us have not willingly taken up this change. It's been forced. So same for me. It's been completely forced. So I'm having to seek new ways of making myself viable. But that's okay. I'm kind of enjoying it in some ways when I'm not feeling scared about the loss of the past. And it was interesting in this whole transition when I had to leave really quite quickly. And someone said to me, you know, you're really resisting this, Michelle, and there's no point because it's here and it's now and you just got to go. And they were so right, and I'm very, very grateful to them for that. So that's one of the aspects that's going to be happening at the same time as this full moon. The second thing that's going to be happening is going to be that Mercury is going to harmonize with Pluto and Jupiter. All right, so Jupiter and Pluto have just had this conjunction on the 4th, and now on the 7th they're coming together. That's today, and it's going to be quite harmonious with Mercury, and Mercury is fire and spirit and moving things forward, and that's also really, really interesting. So Jupiter is about expansion, Pluto is about transformation and about faith in ourselves, but particularly on today with this full moon, it's definitely about transformation. So Mars in Aquarius is pushing us to think, move and change. Uranus in Taurus is thinking and pushing us to think about how we're living our life. So that's pushing us to change. And Jupiter and Pluto in harmony with Mercury is also, that's going to get a bit of fire behind it, some oomph behind it, and really start to push that forward. So I think that's going to be quite interesting to be looking at that. One of the downsides of this full moon is we're going to have some elements of frustration about the old or anything that we feel is holding us back, because we're being pushed to go forward. And when we're getting pushed to go forward, anything that's holding us back is going to make us not want to do that. But we need to be starting to think about what the future is going to look like and how we're going to be working within that future in whatever way, shape or form that future is for us. And that's what we're going to be being pushed towards. We might have a little sense of rebellion, but I think that's also okay, because it's a tough time. I mean, most of us being restricted. We've had a lot of things taken away from us. We're in much smaller spaces. This is my entire space for 14 days. No balcony. I can't open the window, and my window looks over masses of car parks. If I sit in one particular corner and look at it, I can see some greenery, but I'm really looking out on car parks. So not a lot of inspiration there. And if you ever want to see an empty concrete jungle, have a look at empty car parks. It's just void. So I think that's quite interesting. For me anyway, because I really like visual stimulus. So to have nothing that's stimulating me visual is going to be difficult, I know. So think about, that's an email coming in. So think about that, what's going to be harmonizing with you. So think about this full moon as giving you insights. And where you are feeling frustrated, what I want you to do is don't just get frustrated, but go into it a little bit and try and understand what it is that's making you frustrated. And then you're going to find, is there something that I can change? And maybe it is, and maybe it's not. And if it's not, you just have to suck it up and go, okay, I can't change it now. The only thing I can change is my response to it and my attitude to it. So this is not a time for us to get caught up in things that we cannot change. This is us to be thinking about in the future, what is it that I would like to be doing, and where do I have these areas that I can be making the changes in? And that's what it's about. It's not about letting us get frustrated and bogged down with the things we can't change, because there are just so many of those. It's accepting what we can't change, but even within that space, have a think about realistically, what can I do and where can I go? And I think that's what we need to be thinking about. Also, the actual full moon itself, because it is quite a busy full moon, so there's one other aspect I need to discuss with you. And that aspect is that the sun in Aries is going to form an opposition to the Libra sun. So that's also happening at this, to the Libra moon. So the sun in Aries is going to form an opposition to the Libra moon. And that's on this axis, actually. They're on a long axis, Aries and Libra. And when we start with Aries, Aries is all about self. So what's important to me, and how do I see myself, and where is this going? And Libra is all about other. And so we're on this continuum, and this is what we're going to be being triggered for. And we're going to be, it's a full moon, we're going to be shown these elements where we're not comfortable between the relationship of who I am as self and how I am with other people. And I think it's very interesting to be having this full moon now, when most of us are in imposed, either self-imposed or government-imposed quarantine periods and in our own homes and with restricted access. And we're also facing this very difficult relationship, because the virus is very much about me, and I need to take care of me and manage me, but also what's my social responsibility against what my social need is, and how do I balance that, and how do I manage to support and look after the rest of humanity, which is about the earth chakra. How do I manage to support and look after the rest of the earth humanity with love, root and heart chakra, at the same time protecting myself? And it's asking us to find within ourselves the ability to find compassion for other people, even though we are very consumed right now with how we are feeling and our own fears. And understanding that if we allow ourselves to be in fear and we allow ourselves not to give compassion to humanity, people around us, and to give them space, then we're just going to be triggering these negative increase in energies, and that's the last thing we need. And this is very much a challenge for us now, and this is the spectrum that we're on, and this is what we're trying to get this balance around. So it's going to be very, very interesting. The other thing, of course, with the Venus-Mars trine, so this is the other thing now, Venus is in Gemini, and while it's in Gemini, on the 7th, we're going to have a trine. There's a lot happening with this full moon. And what that's about is Venus is all about, and Venus rules the Libra moon, right? So Venus is going to be trining Mars. Mars rules the Aries sun, and that's on an axis. So just to run through that again. The sun in Aries is going to be forming an opposition to the Libra moon. Venus, which rules the Libra moon, is going to be trining, joining, conjuncting, interacting with, crossing. It's an interesting word, trine, but it means coming together, and coming together, not like twisting around. It looked like a helix. That's a trine, a helix. And Mars rules the sun. So you can see we've got Venus, which is about love, and Mars, which is about war. So you can see what I mean about this axis, where we're evaluating all of these aspects of ourselves. And you can see that it's two extremes. Me, them. Individual, social. Yeah? Personal, communal. So you're getting all this sense, right, of this axis. And then that's being doubly layered with Venus and Mars intertwining. So what they're doing is saying, where does that come together? How does that work together that we keep ourselves nice, strong, positive individuals, but we're still able to work and function and interact socially? And that's going to be highlighted for us with this full moon. And so and I think that's really, really, really interesting. Now, the other thing that's happening is we've got Aquarius and Uranus in a square, and this square is going to be triggering conflict resolution. So where we're having this dichotomy of self versus other, which is the Aries Libra, that's always going to be highlighted, and then we're going to have the help from the Aquarius Uranus square, which is going to allow us to see where we are not being consistent, where we're not being helpful to ourselves, and where we're not being helpful to the community, and where we're not helping socially things grow and live and be. Because we need a new way of being. Because we're being asked to, and we're being forced to, live our life in a new way. And that's what this is all about. This is so the economy and the dilemma that we're having to work through. And you can see that all of these layers are really bringing it in to be highlighted with this full moon. And some of this is going to be quite interesting because, again, if we take it back, and I really do want to be talking a little bit about the business perspective, and I think I'll do a separate video on that because there's some other aspects I really want to draw out. But if we have a think of this from the business career mode, because we need to be thinking about this because the economy is changing, the infrastructure is changing. Some companies will no longer be able to function. Some industries are going to have to change radically, and we're going to be caught in the middle of that. So this is also part of our thinking, and that's about where is the future, and how do I exist in that future, and how do I work in that future. But I'll put all of that and I'll have a discussion about that in a separate video, because I think that's interesting right now for us to be thinking about. So we need to be thinking again long term. This is really the year to be doing that. And it's difficult to think long term, because if we try too hard to think long term, we don't know what's going on. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to be open to long term. But I just want you to be thinking about how do we work through today, but being open to long term. So some things we need to be thinking about is we really need to be thinking very carefully about our money. We really need to be thinking very carefully about our resources, and we need to be developing them and strengthening them and ensuring them so we know we've got something for the future. And that's where we're at with this rather interesting and somewhat strange full moon. So it's all about us having a look at where we're at in terms of ourselves as individuals, and then also in relation to how we are with the group. So the chakras for this new moon, for this full moon, are two chakras, not three chakras. The chakras for this full moon is the solar plexus, which is all about how we perceive other people and how we perceive other people perceiving us. Okay? So that's the third chakra. What we think, or how we think other people think about us, how we think other people value us, how we value how other people value us. Okay? That's the third chakra, and that's really important to know when we are being true to ourselves. The third chakra, which is the solar plexus or the gut chakra, I've got a gut instinct about this, I've got a gut thinking about this. So that's that one. And then the other one is the throat chakra, because that's about communication. And again, it's not just verbal communication, it's typing, it's writing, it's emojis, it's GIFs. So it's us thinking about how are we communicating with other people, about ourselves, about our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with them, the greater people, both those intimate relationships and those more external relationships, because they're all important. And how am I coming across? And is how I'm coming across how I want to be coming across? So they're the two chakras that we're having a look at. And what I will be doing is I will be doing some free meditations. I will be putting those on my Facebook sites. And if I've done the recording of them, I will then be putting them up on SoundCloud, so people can get access to them. And I'll also be putting them up on my website. And we'll have a look at, I'm hoping they'll be useful to you. So that's my plan over the next couple of days to get those up and running. And I'm looking forward to that. So I'm just going to leave it there. It's a very interesting full moon, but it's going to be highlighting for us elements where we are not comfortable and we haven't worked through the relationship between me as me in my intimate relationships, and me in my external relationships, but also me as part of society. And that's an interesting point, isn't it? Okay, I'll see you later. I will do the tarot for this full moon. I will remember my promises. I will do something on business in the next couple of days, and I will get those meditations up for you. Okay, bye-bye. Take care, and it's really lovely to be speaking with you once again. Bye-bye.